In 2012, director Joss Whedon and star Robert Downey Jr. gave the world the first taste of a super ensemble that would consume the world of cinema.
In 2024, we try a fan favorite brand that's getting up there in age, Brad.
The film is Avengers.
The whiskey is New Riff 8-year Kentucky Straight Bourbon.
And we'll review them both. This is
the Film and Whiskey Podcast. Welcome to the Film and Whiskey Podcast, where each week we review a classic movie and a glass of whiskey. I'm Bob Book.
I'm Brad G.
Brad, we have finally arrived. It's MCU-ville now. From here on out, baby.
This is the peak of our podcast, Robert.
I am
never get better than this.
Dude, I'm putting in overtime on Disney Plus from here till the end of our season. Between MCU and Star Wars, it's all Disney all the time.
I saw a Instagram reel the other day, which means that this is true, that I think it was 29% of all hours, like time, not like individual episodes lost, but of all time Disney Plus, 29% of it is Bluey.
Good.
Isn't that why? Like,
listen, I thought you were going to say it was all spent on the Avengers, and I was like, ugh.
No, Bluey, a 7-minute kids show made in Australia.
It's freaking great, man. I don't know what to tell you. Maybe if the Avengers took notes from Bluey, I'd still be interested in the MCU, dude.
Here's my question to the audience. Is anybody still interested in the MCU?
Here's the thing, man. Like, I'm going to build off of your question with a question, Brad. And it has to do with like when I first saw this movie, which I will say up front, Brad, Avengers 1, good movie. I love this movie. Very, very good. Fun time at the movies.
Yes, loved it when I saw it. Loved it again when I watched it just for the podcast.
The little end credits teaser for Thanos showing up, where they just show Thanos' crappy CGI, ballsack chin. In the movie theater, I didn't know what that was. I didn't know who that was. I didn't read comics growing up. So, like, do I have familiarity with the character of Captain America? Absolutely. But when they show Pink Hulk, he looks like a Pink Hulk. I was like, oh, snap, here he comes, Pink Hulk, baby. And then, like, I heard people on the way out of the theater going like, oh, that was Thanos. Do you know about Thanos? And his friend being like, no, I don't know about Thanos. I feel like between the time that hit in 2012 and the time this all wrapped up in 2019, both society wanted us to know all the intricacies of all these comics, and the general population tried to convince each other that we all knew the backstory of all these. I don't know why it was so important to us to pretend like we were all nerds who read comic books. Like
back in the 80s and 90s.
I'm a nerd who watched movies growing up. That's my nerdy thing.
I'm a nerd who played video games.
I don't need to be a nerd who read comic books. Do you know what I mean? And I think the most frustrating thing was that we all had to pretend like we knew what the Infinity Stones were for a long time.
Yes. Dude, I 100% agree with you. The only reason I knew who Iron Man was because of my video game nerddom. And I remember playing, you remember the old like arcade style side scroller punch 'em out fighter games?
Yeah.
Back in the 90s, like on the Super Nintendo and the Sega.
Yep.
I just remember playing a Marvel Avengers, I don't know what the name of the game was, but it was one of those side scrolling action fighter games. And one of the characters you could play as was Iron Man.
Yeah.
And like, that is the 100% extent of my knowledge about Iron Man before I walked into a theater in 2008.
Well, I think, I want to get to like our actual episode. And folks, by the way, hello. Hi, this is Film and Whiskey. We talk about movies. We talk about whiskey. This season, what we're talking about is the highest grossing film of each year from 1988 to 2019. So we're going year by year and we're trying to figure out, why did America love this movie so much? And with the Avengers, it's pretty easy to put 2 and 2 together, Brad. This is what we would now refer to as Phase 1 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And I remember when Marvel first kind of announced that we're doing a cinematic universe, everybody was like, cool, thumbs up. what does that even mean? I don't think we understood
Mhm.
the extent to which everything would be inundated and saturated with Marvel for the next 10 years moving forward.
Ugh. Yeah.
But to set the stage for our conversation, I feel like we kind of need to situate ourselves in what was the superhero film in 2012, right? Like we had, we've looked at Tim Burton's Batman. We've talked about the Spider-Man films and the X-Men films. And then you hit 2008 and you get both Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight and you get Iron Man, which really kickstarts the MCU. You have the crappy Ed Norton Incredible Hulk movie. You get a Thor movie. I'm pretty sure the second Thor movie also comes out before Avengers. And you get at least one more Iron Man and a Captain America. And then they're like, we're going to bring all these people together. It's going to be a fun team up movie called The Avengers. And it really did feel like an event, even though I would say to this point, the average moviegoer still wasn't really clamoring for every specific subsequent Marvel release. Like, I didn't see either of the Thor movies in the theater. I didn't catch the first Captain America till it came to video. Like, I watched them all. But
to video?
Yeah, I remember renting it.
To VHS?
Betamax. But I mean, I saw all the movies, but it wasn't like this huge, we have to see every Marvel thing. And then the Avengers happened and it felt like everything kind of gelled finally for Marvel. This was a big deal in 2012.
Oh, if you, man, I don't know what our audience numbers are. I feel like most of our audience is 25 to 35-year-old men. Mm-hmm. Is that right, Bob?
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay, so most of them would remember this coming out. But if you are young enough that you don't remember Avengers coming out, think about Endgame, but a more hardcore audience.
Oh,
does
interesting.
That make sense?
That was not my experience at all. I want to hear more about how you perceived it.
Well, in my mind, well, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm kind of flipping the ideas. I feel like Endgame, every single human being in America went to because you had to go see Endgame.
Yeah.
Avengers was still at the front enough that not as much of the general public saw it, in my experience.
Yeah.
It felt like still there's a more hardcore audience who was sucked in by the Avengers Marvel universe.
Yep.
That was oh, we have to see this in theater. Whereas by the time you hit Endgame, it's your grandma's going to see Endgame, even though she's never heard of the word Marvel.
Yeah. It definitely felt more like an obligation by the end of it. Whereas this one was more I thought Thor kind of sucked. And, I'm iffy on Iron Man 2, but it looks like they're finally going to get it right here. And I think it's going to be worth going to the theater just to see superheroes punch stuff for 2 hours.
And let me tell you, it really was.
And they do. They punch stuff.
It was such a fun movie. I probably saw it twice in theaters, which is, that's saying something. Bob, we would have been, 21 probably when this came out?
Yeah. Yep.
So, we're the peak demographic.
Yeah.
We were everything that they were shooting for.
Well, and this came out in the same summer as The Dark Knight Rises, which was, I will be frank with you people, it was more anticipated than The Avengers was. The Avengers was I viewed that, the Marvel stuff at the time as they're going to be selling Happy Meals. But Christopher Nolan's Batman, this is cinema. The Dark Knight was cinema. Yeah. And then I saw The Dark Knight Rises and I was like, wow, that's 45 minutes too long and it wasn't nearly as good. And I came out of that summer thinking yeah, you know what? Avengers was probably actually a better movie than The Dark Knight Rises. And it wasn't trying to do as much. And I like that about it. And it felt like Marvel was this scrappy up and coming thing. And within 7 years, it's crazy how much my opinion on Marvel changed. But this movie is still kind of unblemished in my memory, even after watching it this time, because it throws me back to a time where I felt like these team up movies had kind of unlimited potential and they were still just leading into these are going to be fun. We're not taking ourselves too seriously. It's going to be a fun movie. And man, do I wish that they were still happening like this, Brad.
100%. There is so much going on in this film that I really enjoy, even down to the flaws in this film. they feel like flaws that fit a superhero genre-ed movie that I'm just kind of like, yeah, the acting is a little rough around the edges, and the villain is about as paper thin comes. But the villain is written as paper thin. Tom Hiddleston,
great villain,
kills
great
it
villain.
as Loki.
People
Great
forget
villain.
how good Loki is as a real, honest to goodness villain. Because we've done so much to make him like an anti-hero now. They
YTT'd him.
He got YTT'd.
He did.
Oh, that's funny.
Tell me I'm wrong.
No, you're not wrong. You started with white, and I didn't know where you were going with that. It was like, oh, this is going to be some weird racial thing.
He's a whitewashed tomb, Bob.
There you go,
He's
man.
clean on the outside.
All right, Brad, it's time for us to get into our first segment of the day, which we call Brad Explains.
Brad's gonna give us the movie plot with only 60 seconds ticking on the clock. So let's go ahead and hear your take with this little segment that we call Brad Explains.
Brad Explains is the part of the show where Brad breaks down the plot of the film that he has just seen, often for the first time. Now, Brad, we know you watched this at least twice in theaters. How many times do you think you've seen the Avengers between 2012 and this viewing?
0.
Oh, you took a 12-year hiatus.
I sure did.
Wow,
yeah,
okay.
I don't think I've ever gone back. Oh man, Iron Man for the podcast and maybe one or two other times. But other than that, I haven't returned to the MCU, Bob.
It's really pleasant to go back to. I don't know what it is about, like, it hit us at just the right time, but this feels nostalgic every time I watch it. It reminds me of the feeling I get when I watch the original Sam Raimi Spider-Man, kind of.
Oh, what a movie. Can we just talk about Spider-Man?
Yeah,
Like,
just pivot to that.
just completely pivot. Bob, I would agree with you. There's something about that stage of life. And, you know, for this Film and Whiskey Nation, like, we're talking 100% about Bob and Brad in 2012. But, like, there's something about that stage of life, 20, 21, 22 years old. There's unlimited potential ahead of us. We felt like we could conquer the world.
Yeah.
And as we were in the midst of that feeling, you're right, man. The early Marvel films were just so much fun.
Yeah, dude.
Like, they were still finding their footing on what they were as films. The humor felt fresh. And the way that they didn't take themselves super seriously and yet fought serious threats, you know, within the world of the movies. I don't know, man. There was just so much to love about early, you know, phase 1 MCU. Honestly, just calling it phase 1 almost ruins
It does.
that era.
It does.
Like, it was just the early era of the MCU, and I loved it.
Yeah, calling it phase 1 makes it sound like it was a more organized effort than it felt like.
And it wasn't.
Yeah.
Let's just set the record straight right now. Like, everybody acts like, what's his name? Kevin Feige?
Feige, yeah.
Feige is like this brilliant puppeteering mastermind who knew everything. But it is not.
No.
Like, if you do any research on the origins of the franchise, they legitimately were like, hey, let's like connect all these superheroes and maybe have one big smash up ensemble movie and we'll make a bunch, you know, hopefully we'll make a bunch of money and that'll be it.
Yep.
Like, that was the first 4 years of the MCU. And it wasn't until the first Avengers that they realized, like, oh, people seem to really like this interweaving of stories, the serialization of stories, and they turned it into a money-making machine.
Mm-hmm.
But man, the first 4 years, it was kind of the Wild West as far as like what the directors were doing and how they were treating the characters.
All right, man, we've gotten very far afield on Brad Explains. You have a minute on the clock.
we're still in Brad Explains.
To break down the plot of the movie. Folks, this is spoilerific. So if you've not watched The Avengers, what are you doing and where have you been for 12 years? Go watch The Avengers, come back and listen to Brad break it down. 1 minute and go.
The Avengers is a film about superheroes. The end.
Mm-hmm.
These superheroes are separate and they're all going their own ways. You have the Hulk, you have Iron Man, you got Captain America, Thor, Black Widow, and Hawkeye.
Mm-hmm.
So there's 6 Avengers and they're all about avenging things. And so they come together to fight this threat because Loki stole the Tesseract, and he's gonna open up a portal, and a bunch of aliens are gonna blow crap up, and it's gonna be terrible. So they join together, but then they suck. And Loki blows stuff up, and he kills Agent Coulson. And Agent Coulson was like really cool, and he had trading cards with Captain America, and there's blood on him. And they're like, we got to avenge Agent Coulson. And then the portal opens up, and aliens destroy New York, and the Hulk is smashing through stuff, and he's beating these giant space worms.
Time.
And
That's enough.
So
no, stop.
Freaking cool, Bob.
Oh man, the Brad G stream of consciousness. There's trading cards and there's blood and the portal opens up. I feel like that's exactly what the writers' rooms on the MCU think that their fan base sounds like. You know what I mean?
Yes.
We need to put the cards in, and then there's the portal. Like that's exactly what they're trying to do, the fan service thing. Let's keep
they're like pushing their glasses up on the bridge of their nose.
Exactly. All right, man. It's the Avengers. We've arrived. Where do you want to start today?
But let's just start in a fun place. What'd you love about this movie, Bob? What just made you feel happy?
Do you know what it is? It's like, I don't want to call it the shagginess. I don't want to call it the looseness, but there is a looseness to the performances that feels like, some of them are still figuring out like who's the character that I'm playing, but also like Joss Whedon is known for being a script writer. And so he's brought on board both to kind of write this movie and kind of guide it through the various types of characters that they've created in this MCU so far. So like you've got Thor, who basically talks in Shakespearean language. You've got Captain America, who's this aw shucks character. And then you've got Tony Stark, who's just a smartass. And how do you make these kinds of characters interact with each other? And what really stood out to me, Brad, was how not bland and how not micromanaged these performances were. So especially, I think, like, you know, Tony Stark early on, you can tell like, oh, this is very different than how he would play Tony Stark 9 years later or whatever it might be. But this is Ruffalo's first go round. Like, because remember, Edward Norton was the Hulk in the Hulk movie. And so they bring in Ruffalo.
Super easy to work with Edward Norton.
And it sounds like, from all accounts, Ruffalo actually is a really easy to work with guy.
Yes.
But this is his first time playing this character. And I really loved the sort of like haunted, tortured, a little bit. Like, he's got his little tics to his Bruce Banner. I thought it played beautifully. And and the first time you get the tension between Captain America and Iron Man, I just thought that the acting in this movie was really, really good. And it's been a long time since I've seen an MCU movie and thought anything more than just like, oh yeah, he was the perfect guy for this defined character. It wasn't that. It was more just like, wow, these actors are doing a good job at acting. And I haven't had that feeling in a long time with the MCU.
100%. It felt like they were really exploring their characters and still learning what all of their quirks and oddities and motivations are. And I'm glad you brought up Mark Ruffalo, because he is the one who stood out to me. Like, I don't think he's a perfect actor in this film, but the moment where he finds out that they're actually using the Tesseract to make weapons, and he starts to get angry, but he's holding it in and like trying not to become the Hulk. Bro, I was blown away with the depth of emotion that you feel of his performance.
Yeah, 100%, man. And, you know, the funny thing is, you asked me to rave about things I loved, but I kind of have to fold in like some of what I didn't like about the movie, because it's also endearing to me. And it's that, like, one of the notes I took was like, this is a Tubi-ass looking movie. Like, it looks like a TV show that was made for Tubi. There's something about it, just doesn't have a very cinematic look. It was filmed on digital, but it was filmed on digital in such a way that, like, it kind of looks like when you see like a behind the scenes featurette from a movie and they're showing you like how they're filming the stunt, but it's clearly not the completed shot. Every shot looks like that. I don't know how to explain it other than it looks like a TV show. And then there's like every once in a while, there's a shot that they're like, let's put $800,000 into this one shot. And then you're like, this is movie making. Do you know what I mean? But I think even the fact that there's like these weird Dutch angles, and the scene you were talking about where everyone starts arguing because the Tesseract is starting to like manipulate their thoughts a little bit, and you get that stupid like it flips upside down to show you how their relationships have been flipped upside down. Even that, I was like, I love it. This is stupid, and it's great because it's the last time the MCU took any sort of risk in the movie making.
I was actually going to say I actually really liked that scene. Yeah, because like the classic reason you use a Dutch angle, and if you don't know, a Dutch angle is simply a shot that is from way too high or way too low to emphasize the oddity of a situation or that things are going sideways.
Yeah, and specifically like, it's like off kilter too. Like it's at a slanted angle.
Yes. And like the moment they flip to a Dutch angle in that fight scene, it almost reminds me of Lord of the Rings when the whole party is fighting and you get that like weird whiny pitch coming out. Like in the Lord of the Rings, they used sound to show how off kilter and messed up things are right then and there. And in here, they use the camera to do it. And I think it's a great use of the Dutch angle. And it's primarily a great use because they don't use it a massive amount throughout the film. They just use it there to show how things are going wrong. And I'm like, that's a good use of the Dutch angle.
There's also some really great, and I don't even want to call them great shots, but they plan the shots out really well because there's quite a few of these shots where like it'll start with Hawkeye and then somebody will fly by and look, it's Black Widow flying. And so they'll like follow Black Widow for a while and then they'll pan over and there's Hulk. And they show every member of the party working in conjunction with each other as a team. And it's a great way of demonstrating like these guys actually do have this synergy and they form a really great team. And I love that it's this very kind of rudimentary style of filmmaking, but it still feels so much more like passionate and alive than what we get when the Russo brothers take over making these movies. I don't think Joss Whedon is any sort of like artistic genius here, but it feels like it has the energy of a guy who really loved this stuff as a kid versus two guys who are making something that is designed to be consumed and then spat back out. Do you know what I mean? Like there's like I don't want to call it a fanboy energy here because that's not like that word has too many connotations, but like I don't know. It has the energy of a guy who loves what he's doing.
It's joyful.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is joyful and it feels sincere. And you're right. This movie is shaggy and it has a lot of rough edges. But it's that joy at the center that really drives this movie and is what makes me like coming back to it this time go, man, I just had a lot of fun watching that film. I mean, here's the praise that I'll give it, Bob. My wife sat down after a very long day of work and baking and getting ready for a farmer's market and doing all sorts of stuff. And I was like, hey, babe, I'm just going to watch like the first hour of this and finish it tomorrow because we're recording the next day. And she sat down with me and we watched the entire movie.
Yeah.
And like she wouldn't, I was like, I like paused it at a certain point, I think after Coulson dies. And I was like, all right, you ready to go to bed, babe? I'm getting kind of tired. She's like, no. You did this to me. You got me invested.
Well, and crucially, I think it's a well-made movie because when that happens, it's at like the hour and 25-ish minute mark, somewhere in there. And there's like 55 minutes left in the movie. And from that point on, it's like all action. Like the siege on the boat to the end of the film, it's action, a quick lull, and then the Battle of New York. And I think that it has so much kind of propulsion behind it that it's really, really thrilling. And, you know, Brad, it reminds me, I went this past weekend to see the new movie Bad Boys. Not Bad Boys for Life, Bad Boys Ride or Die. It's the fourth one in the Bad Boys franchise. Now, Brad.
Who knew that there would be a Bad Boys franchise?
I have never seen any of the Bad Boys films front to back, but I was bored on Thursday night and I wanted to go see something. The first two Bad Boys films were directed by Michael Bay, and so they've tried to kind of maintain like the look of a Michael Bay movie with these last two. And I have to say, dude, like it was fun as hell. I had so much fun watching that movie because it was it was every kind of action you could want. It was goofy action. It was Michael Bay type, we take ourselves too seriously action. There was some really inventive camera work. And movies like that, they exude this sort of joyousness. And that's kind of the last time I felt like this with the MCU. It's the last time that a movie like this feels like it belongs in the canon of action movies rather than just in the category of superhero film. Because they become so paint by numbers and so rote, and the action is so bland. And I just feel like they devolve so quickly that this one really does feel like I want to put it in a group with, other movies we've watched this year. There's a ton of Independence Day in there. I want to put this next to True Lies. Like, I just feel like they all go hand in hand more than the rest of the slop that we got 7 years after this.
Yeah, and I wonder if it comes from a focus on the wrong thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like the people in charge of the Marvel Cinematic Universe were like, oh my gosh, the people love this type of self-deprecating humor and they love all the tie-ins. So that's all we're going to do. We're going to hire Taika Waititi, who, side note, I like him. I like his movies. I think he just kind of overdoes his style a little bit. But overall, I like him. But he, like, Thor Ragnarok became the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. And they just focused on, like, those two things. And it feels like they lost the joy, that energy that you had at the center of those movies.
Even like the end of this movie where you get the voiceover from Samuel L. Jackson that is kind of reminiscent of the Gary Oldman voiceover at the end of The Dark Knight. But you're just watching these guys go back to their normal lives, and you really want to see, Tony Stark and Pepper Potts get married and have their life together. And they're just like, hey, if we need him again, they'll be back. And there's something about how, I don't want to say slight, but like, yes, the world is at stake in this movie, but they don't feel forced into anything. They don't feel like, all right, this is going to resolve itself 7 movies from now. It's just like, here's the close of this fun mashup movie we did, and if we need to make another one, we will. And there was something about like, oh, that's cool. I'd love to spend more time with these characters. Not, oh, damn it, I got to watch like 8 more of these things. Like, and again, I keep painting this really stark difference in just the span of 7 years, but it feels like once the machinery got moving, it couldn't be stopped anymore. And it's just nice to see what the machinery looked like the day it got installed. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It feels a little more like a City Lights Charlie Chaplin machinery that's like just fun and spitting him around and a good time versus the, I don't know, the Terminator machinery that's murdering humans.
Right. All right, man. Listen, before we go to break, is there anything else you want to talk? I just feel like we've been praising generally like what the movie meant in the canon of the MCU, but like anything else about the movie making itself that you want to praise before we go to break?
I think that we already talked about the acting is witty and sharp and passionate and good. I really enjoyed the action scenes in this movie. Like there was something about it that this time through, it felt like comic book action. Does that make sense? Like I've not read a ton of comic books. I've read enough to have a very vague idea of what comic book action feels like. And this movie specifically, this time through just felt very wham, bow, plam, like all the old kind of tropes about what a comic book looks like. There were moments throughout this film where like you just see Captain America punching aliens.
Yeah.
And it just felt so comic booky.
Yes.
And also, it felt violent.
It was violent, there's a moment in that battle at the end of the movie where they're on those big, like, dune sandworm spaceships riding through the city. Yeah. And it's a shot of Thor and somebody else, maybe Captain America, I don't remember who, but, like, it might have been Iron Man. They're both just beating aliens with their fists. And I'm like, for 2 seconds, I just came out of the experience of watching this movie and I was like, what is this? This is awesome. Yeah. Like, there's just so much pure joy in just watching these dudes punch things.
Yeah.
And I didn't have to worry about like, what are the implications for the broader cinematic universe? It was just like dude punch alien. And that was more than enough for me.
You talked about Independence Day vibes. It almost, for me there, had a little more of like a Men in Black vibe. Of like, I don't know, it's an alien. Just punch it. See what happens.
All right, man. I think we're in a good spot to take a break. Let's drink some new Riff, and then we'll come back and actually talk about the movie. What do you say?
Let's get to it. All right, everybody. We are drinking New Riff 8-year-old bourbon. Now, Bob, this is a 100 proof bourbon coming out of New Riff Distillery, famous for its OKI in the early days. It's been using its own distillate for a pretty long time now. The interesting thing is that for so long, they have been using their own like 4 to 6 year distillate. And this is like the first time New Riff is really going out there and saying, hey, like we stand by our product. We have this 8-year distillate that we're so excited for everyone to try. And Bob, I'm pretty pumped for it because if you don't know, we love ourselves some New Riff.
Yeah, we do. We've had this one kind of ready to go for a review for a while now, Brad, and the logistics of you and I both getting a chance to try it just didn't work out when it first got released. I'm really glad that we're finally getting around to drinking it because we do. We love New Riff. This is basically just an older, more mature version of their classic recipe. And we've always talked about how we love the spiciness of that bottled and bond. It's one of my favorite bourbons that you can get pretty much anywhere at any time for $40-$45. Now, this is a 65% corn, 30% rye, 5% malted barley mash bill. So it's a very high rye mash bill. I'm pretty pumped to try this, man. And 8 years, I think, is a really good point for getting some mature bourbon notes. You know, Brad and I say all the time, if you're going much over 10, 12 years, it can be kind of a crapshoot. And I think that like the 7 to 10-year-old range is really the sweet spot for bourbon.
100%, man.
All right, dude, let's dive in. You've already drank it. I'm drinking it live on air. So let's hear your tasting notes.
Yeah, Bob, on the nose here, I feel like you get some vanilla, you get some caramel. It's got the nice classic bourbon notes. For me, the two interesting notes that stood out were there was some like dry peanut butter, almost like a dry, dusty, like the bottom of a like the all natural Smucker's peanut butter that you have to like stir.
Yeah.
Because the oil all separates.
Yep.
Like when you get to the bottom of that, the oil's kind of all gone. It's just kind of dry and crusty.
Boy, I'm sure that New Riff wants to hear this. This is,
that
like the
is the
crusty
dry peanut butter. And in addition to that, I got like a really nice saltine cracker kind of bready feel to it. It's a unique nose. It's interesting. I wish the rye was a little more present. I got a little bit of that mintiness on the nose, but not enough to really stand out. If that was there, I'd give it a little higher score, but I'm sitting at a 7.5.
This definitely has a different character than the 4-year product, or I should call it the bottled and bond product. It's really dusty, but it's dusty in a good way. It reminds me of some of that like
dry peanut butter.
No, like sawdusty type notes that I get on Willet, like the Willet funk. And I pick up that oakiness. I also pick up a little bit of floral. There is some rose here. For me, this was really vanilla heavy, and I don't remember New Riff being really vanilla. So that's new. That's a new Riff, Brad, is what I'll call it. Hey. But I think this really signals some good things. So I'm going to give it an 8.5 on the nose.
Ooh. As I got into the palate here, it became way more herbaceous than it was on the nose. There was some salted caramel. There was some fresh dill, a bit of like a tart kind of blackberry. Honestly, Bob, I liked this decently well. I think for me, the flavors were just all over the place. And it felt not in a way that like married together to make it like a 9 out of 10. Like normally I get this many notes and when they blend together well, it's like, oh my gosh, this is complex and incredible. For me, this is complex and decent. I'll give it a 7 out of 10. the audacity here is incredible. They are going for a lot, and I love the way they're swinging for the fences.
Yeah, man, I'm in a weird spot with this one too. It's really prickly on the palate. It's not harsh, but it definitely drinks a little bit hotter than 100 proof. And it's because there's so much oakiness. And like, Brad, I read the press release that they sent out with this, and our friend Jay Arisman from New Riff was commenting on how that oak is kind of like their trademark in all their products, but it's really oaky, man. And it's not just oaky, but there's a lot of fresh herbs on this and kind of bitter, I wouldn't call it tannic, but like really herbal, almost vegetal kind of notes, and coupled with straight vanilla extract. Like I've never gotten this much vanilla on a New Riff product. It's interesting. It's really different than what I'm used to. And it is also kind of different from the nose. Part of me wants to say a 6.5 here, Brad. I think I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and I'll take a second, third sip. I'll give it a 7 on the flavor, but it's way different than what I was expecting from the nose.
Yeah, and as I moved into the finish, there's some dried tobacco. It's very oaky, Bob. I'm with you. This one comes across as a highly oaked bourbon. The rye finally starts to come through on the finish. There's a bit of peppermint. It's a good finish. For me, it's a little bit of a step up from the palate, if only because the flavors finally streamline a little bit. I'll give it a 7.5 here.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm listening to you talk, and it sounds like you're pulling your punches a little bit. I don't know that you are, as much as I just don't know what to make of this, because when I hear New Riff, I have a very specific flavor in mind, and this is just way outside that wheelhouse for me so far. It's a really oily and really long-lasting finish. I'll give it that much, but it's just really herbal, man. I'll give it a 7 on the finish. I'm also going to give it a 7 on the balance, and that takes us to value, where, Brad, I actually did not look up the price of this. Do you know what it is in Ohio and elsewhere?
I do. It is $68.
Oof. Okay, so we've been kind of kicking around this year this idea of once you start getting into higher aged products, you pay $10 for every year that it's been aged. And, our friend Wes was talking about that with like some 15-year-old product. Now, that would mean that this should be $80. And at that point, this is a steal. This is a little bit of a bargain. Brad, I think just frankly for me, in my flavor wheelhouse, I still prefer the regular old bottled and bond bourbon to this. And that's like $40 to $45. I can understand, obviously, why this is $20-something more expensive. It's double the age. I'm sure the batches are considerably smaller. I don't think this is a bad value just in terms of where the price is set. I just don't know that I would pay $68 for this. I think I would for myself stick with the $45 bottled and bond. And because of that, I'm just going to give this a 6.5 on the value.
Oh man, I think that all of your thoughts on value are accurate, Bob. I'm just comparing it to what I can buy for $68 in the whiskey world. And to be frank, I think I can get a lot of better whiskey, Bob. I don't mean that as a slight to New Riff. I love New Riff. I think this is a good product, but I think this is a good product at like $50 to $55.
Yeah, is there anyone selling 8-year-old whiskey for $55?
I don't know.
That's the thing. Like, I'm with you. If you just sat this in front of me and said, how much would you pay for this based on taste? 100%, Brad. But then you have to think of like, is there an 8-year-old product out there that's like 8-year-old age stated, not just there's probably some 8-year-old stuff in the blend that is selling for $50? I don't know.
I don't either.
Well, you should be the first, New Riff.
I'm going to be I'll be the harsh one here, Bob. I think this is a 4 out of 10 value.
Oof. Yeah, I don't think this is a bad whiskey. And I mean, my score even reflects that. This is a 36 for me out of 50, which would put me into like the, slight thumbs up recommend category. Brad, where are you coming out of 50 on this?
I'm at a 33 out of 50. But with the 4 out of 10, I'm at a 29 out of 40 on the tasting categories. So like I'm close to that 75 out of 100 range just based on the taste. And that would put it into solid like silver, maybe gold medal status. If I was, judging this at the competition, like It's a solid bourbon. I just don't want to pay that much money.
I mean, listen, I think our relationship, not even a relationship, our, I guess, preference for New Riff has been pretty established here on the podcast. We like this brand a lot. And we've probably tried, gosh, I don't know, both of the bottled and bonds. We tried the single barrel. We've had a couple different variants where we drank like 2 different corns that they used in their process. And so like, I don't know, this is like our 6th, 7th, 8th New Riff product on the show, Brad. And like, you know, if I can speak freely, this might be like towards the bottom of the ones that I liked, but it's still a 36 for me. Like this is nothing bad about New Riff or the product itself. I just think that when I'm ranking out which ones am I going to buy to go on my shelf, I'm looking right now at a bottle of the bottled and bond bourbon. And I think that is still one of the best values you can get in bourbon at $40.
100%. In every way, shape, and form, go buy some New Riff. Go try their single barrels that they put out. Like there is so much great whiskey coming out of New Riff Distillery.
Mm-hmm. All right, dude. Let's get back into talking about the Avengers. What do you say?
Let's get to it. All right, everybody. That was New Riff 8-year-old bourbon. Bob, are you ready to get your ass just handed to you in 2 facts and a falsehood?
Listen, man, I want that winning season. I'm going for it this year, dude. I need one more win to secure a 500 season, and I'm going to get there today, Brad. At our next game, 2 facts and a falsehood.
Brad is gonna try to stump you, Bob, to our right and what is wrong. 2 facts and a falsehood.
2 facts and a falsehood is the part of the show where Brad presents me with 3 items as fact about the making of this movie, one of which is a complete lie. Brad, as I said, I am at 15-9 on the season. Lucky for you, I did nothing but read comic books growing up, so I'm totally gonna ace this 2 facts and a falsehood.
I think I kind of based it around that reality, Bob.
Oh, yeah. All right, Brad, go ahead and hit me with them.
Fact number 1, Samuel L. Jackson's Nick Fury is from the Ultimate Marvel Universe, created in 2000 to reimagine and update the Marvel heroes for the 21st century. Fury's likeness in the comic was actually based on Jackson, who gave Marvel permission to do so. Fact number 2, Thanos is originally featured as the leader of the Chitauri in 1987's Avengers comic book titled "And the Claw Shall Inherit the Earth." In early reads of the script, director Joss Whedon suggested that Thanos was better suited as the overall villain orchestrating things behind the scenes, which led to his role as the primary antagonist for the series. Fact number 3, among Coulson's collection of Captain America cards is a reproduction of Captain America's very first comic book appearance, in which he punches Adolf Hitler.
Okay, point of clarification. On number 1, did you say that that's the first appearance of Nick Fury, or just that when they used him in that 2000-something series they used? Because I'm pretty sure Nick Fury is an older character than that. So I just wanted to make sure I heard the reference correctly.
Yes, he was a part of the Ultimate Marvel Universe, which was, a sub-series of the universe created in 2000.
Okay, but are you saying that was his first appearance, or that he was just part of that thing?
Fact number 1, Samuel L. Jackson's Nick Fury is from the Ultimate Marvel Universe.
See, this is what I don't know.
Created in 2000.
I mean, maybe he was. Maybe that was a run of comics. I'm pretty sure Nick Fury is a white guy from like the 60s. And so like, that's what I'm trying to figure out is, did you just pull a fact about Nick Fury off of the internet that is referencing a specific run of comics where they did model him after Samuel L. Jackson? Or did you make this up because you don't know anything about Nick Fury?
That's a great question, Bob. How much do I know about comic books?
Well, I mean, tons, obviously.
Yeah, so much.
So I think it's either 1 or 2. And I just don't know. Again, like, I don't know if 1 is something that you concocted or not. I'm going to say I know for a fact that Nick Fury is an older character than the early 2000s. So I'm going to say 1's the falsehood because regardless of if it's the falsehood you wrote or not, it is false.
Bob, you have tied yourself into a knot over fact number 1 and gotten this question wrong.
I didn't, though.
Oh, you did.
I mean, maybe he was part of it. The way it's worded made it sound like his earliest appearance was in that run of comics.
As best as I can tell, the Samuel L. Jackson version of Nick Fury is from the Ultimate Marvel Universe, created in 2000.
That might be true. Now, you should have said it that way when I asked you to clarify.
I read the fact as it was written, Bob.
You bastard.
Written not by me, written by a user of IMDb.
All right, so was 2 the falsehood?
2 was the falsehood.
Darn it.
Although I did look up random comic book titles, and I thought the title, "And the Claw Shall Inherit the Earth," was a great comic book title.
It's a good one, man. All right, you got me on a technicality again.
Hold on.
What?
We're also skipping over the fact that Captain America's first appearance in a comic book is him punching Adolf Hitler.
I'm pretty sure it's like the cover of the comic. Have you ever seen that? I've seen that picture before.
No, I have not.
Oh,
I think
beautiful.
that's like the greatest thing.
It's amazing.
I mean, that had to be either during World War II or like right after.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And they make reference to it in the first Captain America movie, too. So it's real good.
That's just beautiful.
All right, Brad. Well, you have gotten me at this game this week, but this is something that was completely unbeknownst to you. I made up a game for you to play this week. Since we're dipping our toe into the MCU for the first time this season, Brad, I'm going to play a quick game with you. I have a list of 10 actors here, and we're going to play were they or were they not in the MCU. Now, the MCU is very expansive. There's a lot of cameos. There's a lot of one-off characters. What I am basing this on is just the films. No TV shows, no extra extraneous crap. Was this person in the MCU, yes or no? Okay.
Can I ask one question?
Yeah.
Is it Endgame and previous, or does it include... I know you said no TV shows, but any of the movies post-Endgame? Because I have zero clue of anything post-Endgame.
Yes, some of them are post-Endgame. So you just have to take your best guess here.
All right, I'm ready.
All right, number 1, John C. Reilly. Is he in the MCU?
Yeah, he is in the Guardians of the Galaxy
He
movies.
sure is. Good job.
Final answer, Alex Trebek.
All right, you got that one correct. John C. Reilly in the MCU. Number 2, Tommy Lee Jones.
No.
Incorrect. Tommy Lee Jones is the drill sergeant in the first Captain America movie.
Is he? Oh,
sure
he is.
Yep.
Oh, my good. Yeah, because it's when they do the whole, this guy's a runt. He sucks. He can't do anything. And then they throw a grenade.
That's Tommy Lee Jones.
That's a good role for Tommy in the MCU.
All right. Number 3, Benicio del Toro.
Oh, he's got to be in it. He's all in his Star Wars MCU phase. I'm going to say yes.
He is. He's in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh, man. 2-1 right now, baby.
2-1. You ready for the next one?
I'm ready.
Tilda Swinton.
Oh. Not that I know of. I'm going to say no.
Tilda Swinton is the main bad guy in the first Doctor Strange movie.
See, I've never seen any of the Doctor Strange movies.
Yeah, they suck. You're not missing.
So there you go.
Yeah. All right, Brad, you're at 2-2. Stanley Tucci. In the MCU or not?
I feel like he should be.
Regardless of if he is.
I'm going to say yes. He strikes me as like one of the douchebags in Guardians of the Galaxy 2 that's the gold people. Like, I feel like he belongs in that group.
He is in the MCU. He plays like I want to say he's like a Jewish doctor in the first Captain America. He develops the serum and then promptly gets shot. Yeah.
Nailed it, Stanley. Good job.
All right. Christoph Waltz.
No, he is not in the MCU.
He is not in the MCU. He did play a bad guy in James Bond in the last 10 years, though. So there you go.
Yes. I was going to say, the MCU doesn't deserve Christoph Waltz.
Sylvester Stallone.
Yes, I think he shows up in Guardians of the Galaxy 2.
He does, right at the very end. I didn't know if you'd remember that.
Nailed it.
What a great movie. Dude, the last 5 minutes of Guardians 2. Freaking great filmmaking.
Freaking great.
Keanu Reeves.
No.
You said that pretty confidently.
Yep.
You are correct.
Nailed it.
Okay. Jeff Goldblum.
Yes, he's in Ragnarok.
Okay. Man, see, I thought that would be either the easiest win or the easiest loss. All right, you ready?
That was the easiest win.
Matt Damon.
Oh, that's a good one. I don't think he's in the MCU. I'm going to say no.
He sure is, and he's in Ragnarok. There's a little scene at the beginning where Loki is watching like a play of his own story, and it's full of cameos, and Matt Damon is playing, I think, Thor in that. Yeah.
He is. You're 100% right. That's wild.
All right, last one. You ready?
I'm ready.
Ryan Gosling.
No. There's no way Ryan Gosling is in the MCU.
Brad.
What?
You're right. He's not in the MCU.
Okay.
Okay.
I was going to say, I'm like, I can't. He feels like he should fit in the MCU, but no.
You came out with a winning record on that one, man. 6-5.
Yeah.
Nicely done.
Hey, thanks, man.
Right.
I'm pretty proud of myself.
So that's today's were they or were they not in the MCU? It's crazy the amount of people who have been in this thing at this point, dude. Like, I was cutting names off the list, but like Annette Bening, Oscar-nominated actress, she's in the MCU. You know, Kate Blanchett, she's in the MCU.
Uh-huh.
I don't think Kate Winslet has been in the MCU. Thank God.
Can I tell you about one of the famed actresses and the conversation we had about her as I watched... Oh, what was it? So, long story short, my friends and I are watching one of the Marvel movies that contained Gwyneth Paltrow.
Mm-hmm.
And it quickly devolved from watching said Marvel movie into looking up her gold-plated dildo.
Yeah, dude.
On her website.
You know what's funny is I don't even mean to interrupt your story. I'm watching this movie and I'm like, God bless it. She's so charming. And it's so weird to think about how everything I've seen about her online in the last 10 years has involved her vagina somehow. Like she's sticking eggs up there. She's sticking gold-plated thing. Like, what is going on? Like, why can't I just enjoy her acting, Gwyneth Paltrow?
Oh, man. Yeah, it was a wild conversation because it took up a solid hour because my buddy Steven and I are both like aware of her wildly strange online store.
Goop, right?
And Goop. And our wives were not. And we took them down the rabbit hole.
That's always an awkward position when you're more familiar with Gwyneth Paltrow's gynecological problems than the women in the room.
It was a heck of an evening. Bob.
Oh, I bet it was, man. All right, back to the Avengers.
I just have to put myself in the shoes of a listener right now who has never heard of this. Do yourself a favor, Google it. It's one of the wildest things you'll ever see.
I mean, first of all, it sounds risky enough just Googling the phrase Gwyneth Paltrow goop. Like, that just sounds like it's going to lead you to some weird spots. And believe me, it does, but not in the ways you'd expect. And on that note, back to the movie, Brad.
Yeah, probably should actually talk about Avengers.
We haven't talked about this movie like at all, and I feel like we're almost done with the episode. I do want to keep talking about the performances a little bit, because it's kind of a minor miracle how well these characters fit into, or the actors fit into the characters. Obviously, Robert Downey Jr. is going to get all the love. And I feel like they caught him in this movie at the perfect place, because I can't remember if this is before or after Iron Man 3, but I think this is just his third time as Tony Stark, and I think he's really got the character down to where he's a dick, but a dick with a good heart, and he's not annoying yet. It's like that sweet spot of Jack Sparrow-ness, where the first movie with Jack Sparrow is really good, and then they all kind of taper off from there.
That's a good
you know what I mean? Like, when you play a character 48 times in a movie, after a while, it gets old, and it hasn't gotten old yet. But every time I watch the Avengers movies, I don't think these movies work without Chris Evans as Captain America. A guy who does not get enough credit as an actor in general. But man, that is a really easy part to mess up. And it would throw the balance of this entire team off if Captain America isn't not only believable, but likable. And Chris Evans really nails it, man.
Yeah, sincerity.
Mm-hmm.
Like the ensemble needs a sincere character who really believes in what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And like, even when he starts to doubt the Avengers initiative and, S.H.I.E.L.D. as a whole, it's not because of some like internal doubting himself. It's because he has this, almost like a Batman strict set of morals and codes. And part of that is not lying. Mm-hmm. And he's like, well, you've been lying to me and using this for something that I didn't know it was being used for. So now I'm angry.
Mm-hmm.
And like, that's the type of firm convictions that, an ensemble of wild wackadoo characters needs to keep them grounded.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm with you. I think Chris Evans kills it here.
I have now seen the film Furiosa 2 times in the movie theater, and Chris Hemsworth, I think, should be Oscar nominated for that movie. He's so good in it.
Wow.
And it's funny to go back to the early Thor days, because not only do I think that they did not know what to do with this character, but Hemsworth has just really come a long way as an actor. And I think that in this movie, he's not bad by any stretch of the imagination. But he's also, it's like one of the more forgettable appearances of Thor. You know what I mean? Because they still don't quite know. Neither of the first 2 Thor movies really worked, and audiences weren't clicking with him. And it's kind of a ballsy move to make Loki and Thor the focal point of the good versus bad in this movie. And, I think he holds his own, but it's really fun to see how far he's come since 2012, too.
I don't know, man. I kind of like him here. I think that he, like you said, he still has enough of that Shakespearean vibe that it offsets him and sets him apart from the rest of the characters. Whereas by the end of the universe, he just kind of feels like a carbon copy of half the other heroes. Mm-hmm. I kind of enjoy the vibe you get here where he's taking everything way too seriously. That works for me, man. I'm a big fan.
Yeah, I like him better here than I do when he becomes like Fat Thor in Endgame. I'm not looking forward to talking about that, dude. Not at all. So this
how many
movie,
Marvel movies do we have to talk about?
Oh, bro, too many. This movie does have some very iconic shots, and they're not really iconic because of the shot. They're iconic because of like what's happening in the shot, if that makes sense. Like, I don't think this movie is framed very well or shot very well, but you do get one of my favorite moments in the entire MCU, which is Bruce Banner saying, "That's my secret, Cap. I'm always angry," and then freaking wheeling around and turning. Oh, it's so good.
Oh, man.
And then that goes directly into the iconic kind of 360 circle shot where you finally get all 6 of our heroes standing back to back and fighting off the evil forces. And it plays that Avengers theme over them for the first time as like a united front. And boy, oh boy, first of all, I love the freaking Avengers theme, dude. Dun, 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 dun.
It's so good.
It's so freaking good, man.
It's incredible.
And it feels like old school movie making. It's like one of the last times I can remember a new character being introduced in movies. And in this case, it's, 6 characters getting their own musical theme that's like a John Williams style theme.
Yes.
Like, it feels a little cheesy, and I love that. It feels like a Saturday morning cartoon, kind of like, these people get their own theme music. They don't freaking do that anymore, and I wish they did.
Yeah. No, I mean, they just repackaged that theme over and over and over again for the rest of the MCU. Mm-hmm. And it's just not interesting the 17th time. But here, watching it for the first time again, like, it felt so fresh and original and triumphant.
Yeah.
There's this joyful triumph to the theme that, I don't know. And when you pair it with the camera circle around the 6 of them as they like pose for their action shot, it's just well done.
Mm-hmm. 6 is the perfect number of Avengers. Like, it's just enough that we care about them. Yeah. And there's already 2 that suck. Like Black Widow and Hawkeye, they don't do anything. You don't add anything to the party here, but we're okay with you tagging along because the other 4 are so cool. And it's like the second that you start introducing, I think it's in Age of Ultron, that you start bringing in Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, and like, I don't care about these people anymore, bro. Like, give me my 6 originals and, you know, 100%. some crappy cameo from Robin Scherbatsky over here in the corner, and then we're good, you know?
Robin Scherbatsky, not a great actress.
She is not. No. And it maybe it's because I've seen her on How I Met Your Mother so much, and there's so many episodes of that where they are pretending to be serious as like a joke. She's one of those actresses now where, like, when I watch her actually try to be serious in an action movie or something, I'm like, okay, again, where's the punchline? The punchline's coming somewhere, right? Not believable. Samuel L. Jackson, however, really good. And he's been, I want to say he's been in conservatively 78 movies as Nick Fury now.
Oh, man.
This is one of the best ones. It's so good, dude.
I love Samuel L. Jackson in this movie. I think he just gives such a great performance from the lens of trying to hold a barely floating ship together. Like that. I think that's what I enjoy most about this, is that they really nail that element of like, this whole Avengers thing is a crapshoot, and it's only the will of Nick Fury that's keeping it together. And they admit that he is manipulative, and he is tugging at the heartstrings of each individual Avenger in a way that manipulates them to doing what they need to do for the greater good. And I like that. I like that level of him as a mastermind.
All right, dude, it's time for us to get into our last segment of the day, which we call Let's Make It a Double.
We're near the end of the episode, so thanks for listening to the Film and Whiskey Show. Let's pair another film with this one, even if it's a struggle. It's our final segment of the day, now let's make it a double.
Let's Make It a Double is the part of the show where we pick a movie to pair up with this one to make the perfect double feature. Brad, I've had some struggles trying to pinpoint what the best movie to pair this with is, because I don't want to pick another Marvel movie. But, like, there's a vaguely familiar sense through the whole film that I'm like, this feels like a warm blanket. It's the kind of movie that I've seen 100 times, done 100 different, with, you know, 100 different sets of characters. And then I'm like, okay, but like, what's the one that it reminds me of most? And I can't think of a single name. So I'm really interested to hear what you picked, because I'm still struggling over here.
I am going to pick. I'm going to go old school. I think it would be fun to kind of see the origin of superhero movies. I'm actually going to go with 1978's Christopher Reeve starring Superman.
Why is that?
I just think it'd be fun. Like go back in time, see what superhero movies were in kind of the origin period. You know, maybe if you want to make it a triple feature, go from the 70s into the late 80s and watch, you know, Batman, and then jump right back in and hit up the Avengers from 2012.
I want to say Independence Day because there's a lot of Independence Day happening here, but I think I'm going to go with a movie that between the two of us, I think we've already mentioned at least twice in our Let's Make It a Double this season, and it's Pixar's The Incredibles. Because if you're talking about a team-building movie where by the time they all finally meet up as a team and they've all embraced their powers, you get that iconic shot of them finally all flexing together for the first time too. And I think that it's a similar kind of high. It's like, man, I freaking love these characters. Before they even became superheroes, I loved these characters, and I'm ready for them to kick ass now. And I'm like on board with them. And I think that that's kind of what's missing in superhero movies now. It's almost a baseline expectation of, you already are supposed to love this comic, and therefore we don't have to make you want to love this character. Whereas these movies, you know, there's like an hour of this movie that's just strictly build up to the payoff. And it's not even really build up. It's just like, hey, what if we threw a bunch of established characters in a room and then watched them bicker until they sorted out their problems? And it's fun, but it takes its time to get to the payoff. And I think that it's something that it shares in common with The Incredibles. And I think that's why I love both movies, Brad.
Yeah, Bob, I think that's a great pairing. Like, I can't imagine a more fun night than sitting down and watching The Incredibles and Avengers.
All right, well, on that note, let's give this movie some final scores. Brad, we've been talking about how much we love it. We made it sound like it's a 10 out of 10. I don't think it is a 10 out of 10. I think it's a little bit long. I think it takes a long time to get going. I think it looks like a TV show. But damn it if this isn't like the most perfect 8 out of 10 movie. I don't even know if I'd call it an 8.5. It's an 8, but I don't regret watching this ever. Like, it's just a freaking fun movie. It just reminds me of old school movie making. And I love that about it. It's only 12 years old and it feels like it's from a bygone era. And yeah, I'm really grateful and glad that I got to watch this today, Brad. 8 out of 10 for me.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you, Bob. 8 out of 10. Really fun movie. Great superheroes with witty lines. So much fun dialogue in this movie, and great action scenes. And that's kind of all I want. And like, even let's just take the end credit scenes that MCU became so famous for. Like, the end credit scene in this movie is them. Yes, you get a little bit of Thanos, but it's them eating shawarma.
Mm-hmm.
And it's great.
Yep.
And I just, that's character building. Yep. And I like that.
All right. So that's it from us. We have given this movie an 8 out of 10 on average. Are we way off base? Or, I guess MCU stands, come for us in the comments or whatever. But we gave it an 8. We like this movie a lot. Tell us what you think of the first Avengers film. You can find us on all of our social media accounts: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Film Whiskey.
Or you can jump onto Discord. Over on our Discord server, we are having conversations every single day about movies, whiskey, and a wide host of other things. If you want to join the conversation, you can find a link to our Discord at the end of every single one of our show notes.
Brad, I have good news and bad news about next week's episode. The bad news is we're watching the movie Frozen, a film that I have actively tried to avoid watching for like 11 years now.
Oh. I watched that movie once in the barn after I graduated. I was visiting my then fiance.
Wait, can you give some context for what is the barn? You just make it sound like you were in a barn somewhere.
If you've been to Malone, then you know what the barn is.
That's fair.
We were watching this, and I literally got done, and I was like, Can I never watch that again? And Haley was like, yeah, honey, you don't have to watch that ever again.
And
now,
you
Bob,
do have to watch it again, honey.
You are making me watch this again.
I did what your wife never could, man. Forced you to watch.
Don't like that phrase.
So that's the bad news. The good news, Brad, it's our 250th movie on Film and Whiskey.
You made us watch Frozen.
I didn't make anything. The viewers of the American public watched this in 2013.
I am not blaming the American public. I'm blaming you.
Let's say it this way. To all of our listeners, next week is the 250th episode that you will have heard. Brad, if you want to consider our test episode on Anchorman to be episode 1, then the Avengers was our 250th movie. So there you go.
I like that. I like that a lot more. Let's hear it. If you listened to our test episode before we took it down a few years ago, reach out. Let us know. I want to know who has listened to that episode.
Brad, I think at the end of the day, my friend Elsa would tell you to let it go. And we will see you next week for Frozen. But until then, I'm Bob Book.
I'm Brad G.
And we'll see you next time.